I know. You're just sitting there scrolling through your feed, waiting for someone to pop on and tell you how to solve the Spokane housing crisis. Wait, that's not what you're doing? That's what I'm doing. With the inventory of available homes still at record lows, we're down 6.2% of available homes from February of last year. It's safe to say we're still in a crisis. So stay tuned for this month's market update to find out how the current low inventory environment might be affecting you and what you can do about it. Hi, I'm Heather Matthias with Haven Real Estate Group here in Spokane, Washington. And today I want to talk to you about the housing market and kind of what's going on and what we know. And make sure you stay tuned to the end for some helpful tips on how we can address the housing market problems, as well as a surprising tip for those of you who might be feeling discouraged in the market. Okay, so we're going to go through these numbers, fairly quickly, and then we'll get to what I hope are some thoughts on solutions. The main story that the data is telling us this month is that inventory is still low. We're at right about 0.4 months of inventory, which basically means that a home that goes on the market sells in a nanosecond. Actually, some of them sell before they're even listed, about 20%. Now, the reason I've got this helpful chart on the screen, I don't know if you can see it, I'll make it bigger for a minute so you can take a look at the numbers. But the reason I break the data down this way is because I think it's so important, whether you're buying, selling, investing, whatever it is you're doing in the housing market, it's so important to know kind of the micro market that you're in. When we aggregate all the data together from $200,000 homes to $1 million homes, it creates a false picture of how much inventory we have, who your competition is, those kinds of things. So I break the data down this way to kind of help you have more specific data to your situation. Okay, so as you may or may not know, in Spokane, we have two very distinct housing markets. You could really say three, but the main market is everything under $700,000. In the last 12 months, we've sold over 7,000 houses. That's where the bulk of our inventory goes. So we're going to talk about that market first, and then we'll move on to the luxury market, or what I call the luxury market, which is everything over $700,000. If you look at this chart, you can see that there's not a huge amount of difference in the data. I mean, it varies like slightly, although I do anticipate that as we come out of this unprecedented low inventory time in the future, you will be able to see subtle differences between, a $200,000 house and a $500,000 house. You certainly could 2 years ago, even though inventory was still tight. Okay, so we're going to move forward into the luxury market, but the short story is 700,000 and below. You want an agent to help you shop in this market because you've got to be a little bit creative. Things move so fast. I'm sure you've heard all of the stories. Okay, now let's talk about the market over $700,000 because that really is very different. So the slide is different up here, and you can see that I break this down quite different, like a lot differently. So one is I separate out homes on under an acre to homes that are on acreage, basically, because they're just different animals completely. And then I also separate it from 700,000 to 1 million and then 1 million and above. Now, when you're looking at this, you can see why it is so important to know the market segment that you're in. For instance, if you were the second house to list on an acre or less over $1 million, you'd see that you have a competition of one and that house has been on the market for 7 months. So you want to be super careful about your pricing strategy, your marketing strategy, or at least adjust your expectations to know that house is going to be there at that price point in all likelihood for quite some time. This is why it's very important that you have someone who understands the distinctions in the market so that if you're getting ready to buy or sell at whatever price, you have someone who understands the market that you're shopping in. Now, I know sometimes stats like this can be discouraging. How could I ever survive in this environment that seems so competitive? But it's not intended to discourage you. It's just intended to inform you really the decision to buy or sell or invest has less to do with market conditions than it does with your own goals, needs, and priorities. So we don't abandon our goals because we don't like the market conditions. We adjust our strategy. So make sure you have a partner to work with who understands the market well and who can tailor the strategy to say, okay, this is what your goal is. How do we get you there? What do we need to change about the strategy to make sure we can get you to what you need, which is hopefully long-term wealth for you and your family through residential homeownership? Okay, so enough about the current market. Let's talk a little bit about solutions. Okay, one of my commitments as a real estate professional in Spokane is to not just come to you with problems, but to try and advocate and educate for solutions, because what's the point of talking about it if we don't have answers to the problems, right? Tight housing inventory is not unique to Spokane. It is a nationwide issue. The short story, as always, housing is so complicated. There's a lot of factors that go into it. You know, employment rates, interest rates, available inventory, supply and demand. That's a huge one, and the one we're really up against right now. Population growth, the fact that people are living longer. There are a lot of complicated factors that go into creating these problems. And if you've ever heard me talk before, you've probably heard me say, yeah, we need to build more houses. I don't know what to tell you. And we don't. Even though we know that's what we need to do, for some reason, it's very hard to get that done. So in general, our country has underbuilt for the past 20 years. And Spokane is no exception. But the question really is, how do we build? What is the strategy we need to employ to get this done? Because in the 40s and 50s, our strategy was the suburbs. It was the sprawl. And I don't know if you know anything about the history of suburban sprawl, but it was a recipe for the perfection of segregation. It was very much not just racial segregation, which it certainly was that as well, but economic segregation. It was a very pockety approach to housing. It was this income socioeconomic group goes here, this socioeconomic group goes here. The FHA, there was a policy called redlining where the FHA wildly discriminated against Black communities. In one instance I was reading about, they had to build a giant wall between the white people and the Black people in order to get the white suburbs insured by the FHA. It's dark. So when we have conversations, the biggest objection to any kind of housing diversification or kind of infill strategies are that we're going to destroy the character of our neighborhoods. The problem I have with that is it presumes that the character of those neighborhoods was built on a great foundation in the first place, which we all know. Actually, we don't all know. Most of us don't know our history. But many of us know that it was based on a broken system. So the solution cannot just be to continue to perpetuate that broken system. It has to be adapted. The good news is we know quite a bit about how to build better communities now. We know about how much open space people need. We know how to be a lot more environmentally friendly than we were in the past. There's a lot we can do to build strong communities and to build in a way that improves inclusiveness, that deals with traffic problems, that deals with a lot of the issues that the old way of building suburbs, they were new to it, so they didn't know how to address it. So in the past, we built these very pockety sort of communities, and then in 1968, we passed the Fair Housing Act and solved everything. No, we didn't, but it was the beginning of probably a fight that we'll be in for the next 50 to 100 years of trying to get this housing situation equitable. I've included some links in the description below so that you can help educate yourself kind of about some of the history of fair housing, some of the thought processes about our current Spokane market, and then also some of the thought processes about how do we build a little bit smarter. Or you can just use them to keep yourself up at night. One of the reasons I am so passionate about this is I 100% believe that homeownership is one of the easiest, most obvious paths to breaking generational poverty, to building wealth for regular people, and to creating a future for your family. Now, I know this isn't a problem that can be addressed overnight. I know it's going to take work, and I'm committed to continuing to advocate and educating and helping people understand so that we can come together and build an incredible community. My faith is that when we know better, we do better. I do think that's true about everyone. So let's work to take some of the scariness away from these different types of housing and understand what those objections are and how we can meet them. Now I want to leave you with a little bit of hope, because I definitely have had a couple clients who just were like, forget it. I can't do it. I don't want to buy this house for this much money, and I don't want to be, this isn't what I wanted. I think it's especially hard if you grew up here and you remember you have this experience of your parents being able to afford a house and now you can't. So the first link in the description below is something you should definitely click on, because it's an article based on a recent report from the National Association. It's hard to say. It's an article based on a recent report from the National Association of Realtors. I don't know if I can get through it, guys. You know who I'm talking about, right? And it is the 10 most undervalued cities in the United States. When my husband and I were figuring out our life situation, we lived in a really big city and we were like, gosh, this is a struggle to afford anything. We're both going to have to work really fancy full-time jobs and we may never see our children. We chose to move across the country to better our situation. And that is an option for many people that I think maybe isn't being presented to you because it's not something that we talk about. So take a look at these 10 cities, and whether you're a first-time home buyer that's looking to find a path to start to build some equity, even if you leave for 5 years, get your equity and come back, moving around once you're a homeowner is a very different game than just trying to get into the market in the first place. What we really want to do is help you find that path to get into the market in the first place. And then the other group I think that might find this information kind of encouraging is those of you who are happy to cash out of this market that you're in. Your home value, if you're like me, has gone up by hundreds of thousands of dollars and you didn't have to do a dang thing to get that money. If you're interested in cashing out of this market and moving to a more affordable market, maybe you're ready to retire, maybe you just want to make a shift, make a change, take a look at these 10 cities and see if that's something that might work for you. If you want to talk to someone who has moved her family across the country, definitely don't hesitate to reach out to me. Thank you so much for your time, and I will talk to you guys soon.